Welcome to Growing Your Business Using Self-Financing Methods. I am Kim Kelley, your presenter for today. My background is pretty extensive in terms of the corporate experience. I have 20 years of working in international HR consulting with Mercer and with Cigna Health Care and Nike and Wal-Mart, so names that are pretty recognizable internationally. But the substance to that story is that it's helped to teach me a lot about business and the operation requirements of doing business. And because of that experience, I've also been able to start up and exit my own companies. And I'm on my third startup, which is an apparel product, which I know nothing about, which doesn't mean anything. I think that's the whole purpose of the foundation and putting on these webinars is to help grow your experience and maybe something that you're interested in, but don't know all the ins and outs of yet. And from a personal perspective, I'm a fitness enthusiast and I'm a foodie. Sometimes people think that contradicts itself. How can you want to eat and love to do fitness? Well, it works out well because I can eat all I want and then I can go exercise it off. And then, of course, adventure travel. If you are interested in finding out more about me or my personal interests or even my work experience, my LinkedIn site is there on the bottom of the page. So today, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm engaging everyone, so forgive me as I kind of go left and right, but I want to make sure that everyone understands that today our focus is to review the advantages and disadvantages of self-financing and the types of self-financing that are out there. And what that means is really we're going to truly define what self-financing is. So you're going to be able to understand what it is. And we're actually going to review in particular the customer-funded model and determine if it's really right for you and how do you go about making that assessment for your company. We've already done the introductions into the webinar today, and for myself as your speaker, we're going to talk about what is self-financing, the funding growth via efficient operating practices, funding growth via a customer-funded model, and what, again, are the disadvantages and advantages of both. And then we're going to review what are the top Q&As that come within this subject. There may be more, but this is really what comes up most often. What is self-financing? It kind of seems self-explanatory, right? Well, self-financing is defined as using your own personal finances, the profits of the business, or specific revenue model to grow the business. And self-financing can, when you think of most commonly, like what do I need to self-finance, you think about your own money, right? So you have your personal investments that you can use, your personal savings, as well as a loan against your personal assets. Since those are kind of common knowledge in the sense of self-financing, we're really not going to talk in depth about those today. We are going to talk about the last two bullet points there, and those are keeping profits within the company to be able to finance your own growth, and then strategically gaining revenue to improve your cash flow. The diagram to the right, I just want you to take a second and observe what those different funding methods are. We're not going to talk about them in today's webinar, but I know they will be featured in other segments. Today, we are focusing on just how you, as an entrepreneur, can use these two methods to self-finance. So, operating your business efficiently to free up funds seems maybe like a no-brainer. You're in business to create profit for yourself, but that's not always the case. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're struggling to say, well, I know I want to grow, but I don't have enough money in the bank, how is that really possible? And what you really need to know to be successful into that next level are obviously your numbers and the 3 Ps. And your numbers really constitute your sales or revenue, your operating expenses, and your profit. And if you're looking at a way to really assess how well you know those numbers, remember the simple equation of revenue minus expenses equals profit. And the 3 Ps are your people, process, and product. So the objective is to make sure that you are not just knowing your numbers and making sure that you have a profit, but that your people are running efficiently and you're managing them to their talents, that if you have people that are hired, which we can talk about later, but also that the processes that you use to execute your services or make your products are as efficient as possible. You want to grow that margin, and the only way to grow that margin is to really produce something efficiently. And the last part is obviously that you're doing the right mix of product and service. Many entrepreneurs start with this one passion. I like to make jelly. And they find out that it's not just the jelly that it really sells well, but a particular flavor of jelly. And a particular flavor of jelly at a particular season or for a particular customer. As you start to grow, even though you may have a passion to create this one product, it'll definitely evolve. And you'll know that because you are paying attention to your business in order to operate efficiently, to create and free up funds so that you can continue to grow. Obviously, this is the way from a financial philosophy that is the safest way for you to grow, because you have not given up any of your personal assets and you've not taken a loan against any of your personal assets. But there is also another way. And I'll pause there just a second because I do segue through pretty quickly. But the second way is really going through a customer-funded model. And a customer-funded model essentially means that you're thinking of a way to collect revenue that is before you having to pay for any expenses. So the three ways of you collecting revenue that endorses the customer-funded model is asking for a prepay. Basically, before somebody gets those goods or services, that you're asking for them to pay in full for that product or service. Post-pay, which means that after you have done the goods or service, that you're asking them to pay for their product. But I want to back up a second. We're just defining the customer-funded model, and post-paying is not necessarily a way for you to grow your business, but it is a way for you to gain your revenue. And then the combination is that you have pay half before and then pay half after. You'll see that commonly in service areas where maybe you're a contractor and you're offering some sort of, even maybe a technical contractor, and you're offering some sort of service. Well, your customers are not always going to be comfortable paying 100% of their fee up front, but a way to help gain your revenue so that you have some cash flow coming in before your expenses occur, but also take care of the customers and some of their concerns, is you split that. You ask for half before and half later. So the optimal way of collecting revenue is obviously that you ask them to prepay. If you look at a lot of the quick, fast-growing IT companies, almost all of them ask for a prepay in some way, shape, or form. And they are allowed to grow exponentially because they have all of this cash revenue coming in. And then determining which method of collecting those is really unique. You could have a product or service that really doesn't fit with a prepay or a combination model, and you really do have to go with a post-pay. There's just no way around it. But if you can't do that, we will talk about how you can kind of manipulate your revenue so that you still have some cash flow, and that actually goes back to our previous slide about making sure that you're operating efficiently to have enough profit margin that over time you can still use your own funds from your business growth to grow your business. There are 5 ways to customer fund your business. The first way is the pay in advance model, which we have talked about, and is basically asking your customers to pay before they get their goods or service. The matchmaker model, which you see a lot of IT companies following suit with a lot of bigger companies that have been in the business for much longer, like Amazon, where they're not actually the manufacturer of any good, but they are connecting the customer with the product and asking for the customer to prepay. And all of what the customer prepays for goes into their revenue pool. Again, most common or worldly known is Amazon. Alibaba is coming up there too. I don't want to show any preference to any particular company, but those are great examples. Service to product models, exactly. It's a similar situation where an IT platform is creating a product out of a service that you would just typically provide on a one-on-one basis. And in the U.S. here, we have a company called Angie's List, and I just use that as an example. We have 2 or 3 of the competitors that are growing in that space, but what has been done on that platform is taken a collection of contractors, home designers, plumbers, that typically are going out and trying to engage customers on a one-on-one basis, and instead the product that has rolled out of a platform like Angie's List is a subscription model, but making that a product in terms of the service delivery as a bundle. So service to product model, and then subscription model. We actually have known this for a long time. People come knocking at the door. They want to sell you magazines, 6 months, 12 month subscription. No technology involved there still. So even if you're not a technology platform company, there are still subscription models that will fit for you and allow you to still engage your customers. Maybe you take part, and we have this actually happen frequently at local, what we call farmers market, is that we have a cheese subscription. So basically you pay 6 months for getting a variety of cheeses that are locally made, and they're shipped to your address. But the farmers market is where that company started out. Again, no IT platform, very local in terms of their consumer market, but allows them to plan and get their revenue before their expenses are incurred. A very successful model I've seen. And then scarcity models, those models are not as successful. They still work, they're just not as successful. And the reason why is they're in the moment. You have to be there in the right time, in the right place to take advantage of these sales as a customer. And then as a seller, you have to actually match up with the customer who wants it. And if you don't, then you have excess inventory. Maybe you aren't able to sell the services that you need to in time. Whatever the case may be about what you're trying to sell, the whole premise of a scarcity model is that it's instant. You're there, and after that one sale is over, you've lost your opportunity. And again, I've just explained what the risks are to that, is that you end up with too much excess inventory, or that you aren't able to have sold as much of the service that you have at a given time. So something to think about, 5 different ways for you to think about how to customer fund. Remember, we've talked about the 3 types of revenue and how to gain it and what type of funding, pre, post, and a combination. And now these are 5 ways to actually execute a pre-pay customer funded model. So now we talk about the advantages and disadvantages. And overall, we have the big advantage of control. And most of the time people go into business for themselves because they like that control. They want to be able to be the decision maker if a product needs to change. Or maybe the marketing needs to be revamped. Whatever that business decision is, most people become entrepreneurs because they like to gain that control. And when you have self-financing, whether it's been your personal investment, or you've learned to successfully maintain a healthy profit margin, or you've elected to do a customer funding method, you are able to retain all of that control. And in my opinion, and now when you look at these lists, it almost depends on who you're talking to, if one is really an advantage over a disadvantage. Being an entrepreneur and then also working in the corporate environment, I believe these are strong advantages. You have to focus on your revenue. The most successful entrepreneurs are not necessarily the ones that thought of that one great idea, but it is the one that followed up with knowing and managing and monitoring their numbers. So if you are forced to focus on it, no one else has been invited to the party yet to control your business, that is a big win. You also have to focus on your operating costs. So this widget that you have that you started off making in your garage or in your kitchen or whatever it is, wherever it started, is not going to cost the same as it did day 1 as it would day 60. And as long as you have these growing customer base, because as we all have learned is that costs reduce with economy. And when you are the only decision maker and you've decided to self-finance your business, you are looking at every single way to squeeze in more of that profit margin every time you create and make a product. And it even can come down to, and this is just a little food for thought, I have a friend who here in Dallas, where I am, Dallas, Texas, makes these little biscottis. And I'm going to be honest, and since I haven't said this person's name, they are kind of average. They're not necessarily the best on the market. But what my friend has done exceptionally well has, one, reduced the cost of making a biscotti. And I can't tell you that because I'm sure it's a trademark secret. But also came up with a very clever, cost-effective way of presenting it so that it appeals to a different niche market. And it's the combination of her cost efficiencies, her creative packaging at a low price that created this window of opportunity within a niche market. She would not have been able to do that if she had brought in another partner and not had to force herself to look at the numbers. So again, her passion started, and in the UK, I'm sure you all are laughing at the way I said biscotti, but she all started with this product. She really liked to make this biscotti. But how she was going to grow and to be a successful business was undetermined until she really started to dive into her numbers and understand her operating expenses. And of course, as I've been saying for 1 and 2, is you get to retain 100% of ownership. And then for what I started off with mentioning, you get control. You keep a complete autonomy. And depends on, again, who you're talking to. Sometimes you're not your best voice of reason, because entrepreneurs sometimes have this cloud of hope and dreams. And when you have just the hope and dreams and you're not really weighing on to reality, that sometimes can skew the result of your business. So again, that one could be up for argument. Knowing that I like to have control over things, I put it into the advantage column. Some of the disadvantages are, again, you are solely responsible for the outcome. And this isn't about saying, oh, it's your fault the business failed. This is saying that sometimes it is beneficial for you to have a group process of looking for ideas and brainstorming. And not to say that you can't do that with a self-financing model, but you get very different results from people who are truly vested in the success versus people who are just, maybe you talk to your mom and she says, oh, that's a great idea. You can make, I believe in you. You can make whatever it is that you want. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. Self-financing does not allow for that window of truly vested people who gain the benefits and profits of joint thinking into your business. The limited income at the beginning, that is really a deterrent, I would say, for people to stick with self-financing, especially if they have a family. The thought of not having a salary or profit to really maintain an even average lifestyle is something that really concerns people, and why people typically try to stay away from self-financing. You have to be willing to really penny pinch while you're starting your entrepreneurial endeavor if you're going to do the self-financing route. And then, of course, you increase your personal financial exposure. If you have actually let go of your personal investments, or you have taken debt on your personal assets, that's a lot of risk. You lose the experience of others. That kind of goes and feeds into number 1. People who are invested in your business, and I don't want to be too repetitive, but it is something solid to take away from this conversation, is that you can gain from people's experience. One of my most successful businesses happened because I asked for a very experienced person in that field to become part of my board. And to become part of a board isn't a magnanimous thing, especially when you're a company of 5 people working. It's just a decision that you can make unilaterally because you're the only owner. But my point is that person then had a vested interest in the financial success of my business, and I also was able to gain from the immense amount of experience that this individual had. So self-financing, good, bad, lots of things to think about. The biggest thing about being an entrepreneur is that you are strategically thinking to work out the best solution for yourself as well as your business. So now we're going to go into the Q&A session. And again, these are just the 4 most typical or common questions that come out of just the discussions around self-financing. And the first one is, how can funds be used more efficiently in my business to free up funds for growth? we started the conversation, remember, with understanding your numbers, your revenue minus expenses equals profit, and the 3 Ps, your process, your people, and your product. Though, if you keep those core thoughts, and let me throw out a little tip here. The way that I've been able to do it is my thought process kind of goes all over the place. And especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking about marketing and product and price, and maybe you've hired some people and now you're worried about them, is, you start a whiteboard and you list out the things that you're worried about happening and that have happened, and then some of the hiccups that have come across from the cost. And you'll be amazed as you start to work through all of those concerns that you have, that you'll find ways to operate more efficiently to increase your margin. The second question is, how can I reduce my risks when thinking of spending money on growing my business? Well, I don't have any real words of wisdom here, because entrepreneurship is all about risk. The reduction of risks, I think, is complemented by critical thinking. So again, as long as you're being conscious about how every dollar is being spent in your organization, you're going to end up with enough margin to grow your business, especially if you decided to go with a customer-funded revenue model. Having your customers prepay for goods is actually more common today than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it's almost the right time to do it, no matter what kind of product or service you have. And even if that doesn't work for you, go back through the webinar and look at the different ways, the 5 different models that you can think about that maybe will fit with whatever product or service you're offering. And the third one, what growth level requires external financing, and when isn't it possible to go it alone? Again, go back through the webinar, and I included a diagram, or a chart actually, of bottom to top financing. And I think that's a great screenshot for you to take if you're on the webinar, or just pause it and take down some notes, because it talks about the fundamental level that we're really trying to have this conversation from is the bootstrapping phase, where you've gotten your idea, you developed your business just a little bit, there's some sort of demand. Now you're starting to execute in some revenue. You're starting to gain some revenue, but you're to the point that you feel like, just a little bit more and I can get to that next level. Well, that next level could be financing from your parents, your uncle, your aunt, whatever. As long as you continue to grow and use that model as a reference, it's nice. It's a nice guide. Doesn't mean it will always work for you. You could be offering something that is just skyrocketing and you just can't keep up with demand. Well, then don't follow the flow of the chart. Follow where the best fit for you to gain financing is. And the last one is, I'm starting a business from scratch and need to fund startup costs. Would this approach work for me? Absolutely. The very first business I had was making a food product, and I started from my kitchen, and all I did was, and of course I wasn't smart enough then to know about customer funded models, and I was asking my clients to pay after they had picked up their goods, and I was not an IT or web, I did not have a web presence. It was all just word of mouth. And I had just paid attention to my operating expenses so well that I knew it could fit within my disposable income. And this is really from raw scratch. We're talking at most 25 batches of a product at a time. When you get to that next level, now you have the information that can teach you how to gain revenue on the front end instead of the back end, which would probably lead you to be more successful. So in my opinion, I think it could work for almost all entrepreneurs. Very rare exceptions to the rule, but I'm sure that through all of the webinar series that are being presented, there is going to be the right conversation for you. And of course, you can participate in the forums that are related to each webinar, and we can actually start and engage in a different conversation if you have more questions after that. So today, talked about self-financing. The 3 that we've reviewed are your personal financing, making sure that you are operating efficiently, and entertaining the customer-funded model. Hopefully, you know what customer funding means, how to decipher whether or not it's applicable to you and your business, and also some food for thought about when and what type of financing is right for your business. That is our webinar today. Thank you so much for joining.